My name is Adrian. I will help you with the moderation for this session, and as with the rest of the Q&A sessions for those who have watched before, we are encouraging you to ask your questions via the chat on the right. And let's start with the first question from Dan. Can you give me 2-3 points as to why would you choose Snowflake versus Amazon, Google, or Microsoft Cloud?
Yeah, well, that's a hard one because we're actually partners with all three, as you can imagine. But it is really, if you look at what I was talking about in our architecture, there are things like the multi-cluster warehouse that allows us to horizontally scale automatically. That's one of the features that I think the others really don't have. The native ingestion of JSON into a table and being able to write SQL against it and have it scale is another big one. And the whole architecture that our founders invented, that multi-cluster shared data with the separation of compute from storage. You only store the data once, and you can have any number of independent virtual compute nodes running against it. So you can be loading data and querying data at the same time. And you just you need more resources. You can scale it up. You can go from like a small to a large, or you can just add another cluster and have different processes running on those different clusters. And I've just never seen anything like that. And it's completely in your control because it is delivered. It's a service. And so you can turn that compute on and off whenever you want. The data stays put because it's in the central process. And you're only we charge by the second. So there's no need to run something 24/7, 365. I've hardly see any customers that need to do that. They just turn it off when nobody's using it and turn it back on. And we even have an auto resume and an auto suspend that you can configure. So it's like completely automated, very, very low maintenance. One of my customers said recently they've got their DBAs are now able to spend way more time working on, I'll say, more value-added things rather than maintenance and management.
All right. Thanks, Kent. And to everyone watching, please use the chat to ask more questions. In the meantime, I wanted to ask you, when we look at cloud technology and we look at what Snowflake did, even though the name is Snowflake, it kind of took the cloud world by storm with such a rapid, unexpected growth. What do you think are the enabling technologies, whether it's like hardware, software? What are the enabling technologies that allowed Snowflake to create the business and the technology that you're using now?
Well, it really was, our founders, the founding story really goes, they spent 6 months with a whiteboard envisioning this architecture, and they came from 18 years inside of Oracle and other database companies, knowing what the challenges were. And this is one of the reasons I joined the company, because I'd been in the Oracle world for almost 30 years. And they hit all of it to be able to do big data and relational and data science and data lake all in one platform. And they said, why couldn't we do that before? It's because nobody thought of doing it 30 years ago, right? We have new problems today that nobody thought of when they wrote those original platforms. And so the enabling technology, they said, was the cloud. Being able to have, so I'll use Amazon because I know that one better, EC2 nodes, that's the compute clusters, and S3 is the storage. The fact that those things were there and Amazon had already built the redundancy and the resiliency into those and the ability to scale them, we wrote a product around that talks to the APIs there. And because we did it in that way, in an agnostic way, we were able to port it very easily to Google and to Microsoft to use, because everybody's got cloud compute and cloud storage. And that's the underlying technology. And then we have a metadata engine that is based on FDB that we have then customized to do that cloud management layer. And so it really, wrapped the whole thing to make it a service. And so it just taking advantage of the cloud. That was really it, is that, the innovations in the cloud allowed us to build a product that took advantage of all of those without you having to do all the engineering. Because I had an architect say to me very early on when I did one of these presentations, like, oh, I can build that myself. It's like, great. Who's going to manage it when you leave the company, right? Are you going to put encryption in? Yeah, because we have built-in 256-bit encryption because it has to be secure and it doesn't slow the queries down. Do you know how to do that? Do you know how to let them scale up and scale down at the push of a button? Or is a DBA going to have to go in and do it manually like they do today? And he had to stop and think about that. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, I could build it myself. But then the question is, why would you when Snowflake's done it and it's being delivered as a product and a service at such a low cost?
And as an expert in the field, when you look at what would be the next steps, what is the the missing piece that it's like still needs to be put there, either by Snowflake or in general from like a technological perspective from the market, or like what was the next frontier that we want to breach through?
Machine learning and AI. I mean, that's it. I mean, we have a cloud platform that can scale as far as the cloud provider can scale. So you've got all the compute power, you've got all the storage. Now it's, how do you apply AI and ML to it? And we have customers right now. We have a really great Spark connector. And so people will use things like Data Robot, Data IQ, and things like that to all the data's in Snowflake, and then they use that to train the models. And I think the next big thing is when they can do push down everything into Snowflake, and you can actually train the model in Snowflake. I think that would be awesome, right? And then applying things. I mean, we already do it on our optimization now. There's a certain amount of ML AI going on in there for the automatic optimization. But to be able to do that even more, to be even more predictive about it, to look at your query patterns and your data patterns and anticipate the types of queries you're going to need to run. ThoughtSpot has this great tool that runs on top of Snowflake now, where once you've set it up, you start typing in a question. It's just like Google. It knows the data structures and everything, and it'll finish the question for you, right? And putting all those sorts of things together, I mean, that's really getting to what a CIO said to me years ago is, why can't we query at the speed of Google? Well, I think we're almost there. And ThoughtSpot's tool in particular, which they just launched their cloud version of it yesterday, allows you to do that. It's kind of a natural language thing. You just type in a question a business person would say is, what's my sales been in the Northeast region over the last 3 months? And boom, there's a chart. And it's using that power of Snowflake to pull that data back and build it for you. And I think that's where it's going to go, is this well beyond business intelligence and even what we call advanced analytics, and taking the data science to the next level, right?
That's an interesting example. Can you share with us some other, like, one or two interesting examples of your technology being applied to by interesting companies to power interesting products?
Yeah. So Deliveroo, you familiar with them?
Yes.
The delivery service. So they've got an AI engine behind the scenes that when an order comes in, it figures out, okay, your apartment's here. You ordered from McDonald's. I don't know why you would order from McDonald's, but you ordered from McDonald's, and there's 5 McDonald's around you. Which one is the right one to drop the order into, so the order gets to you the fastest? Because they're gonna route that to a GPS on the delivery bike, right? And the delivery guy is gonna look at that and go, okay, I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna pick up this order for Kent, and then I'm gonna take it, and there's the map to his house. Well, it might be that because of traffic, because it's rush hour, that the closest McDonald's is actually going to take 10 times longer. And their AI is able to take all of this information and is using Snowflake under the covers and say, no, we're going to go to the one that's actually 2 miles away rather than 1 mile away, because it's going to be way faster because of the traffic patterns. I think that, that one was like, that blew me away when I heard about that one.
And the ability to do this like in real time for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of orders.
Yeah. And that's where that scaling comes in the multi-cluster warehouse, to do the automatic horizontal scaling. There's no administration once they set it up. Is if queries start to queue, it just automatically spins up additional resources, load balances all of it, and then when it's done, it turns them off. So it just turns them on and turns them off and turns them on and turns them off as needed. So you're not paying for it if you're not using it. But that allows you to do this kind of concurrent scaling that just is unimaginable in the systems that we were using before for data warehousing. Let me see if I think about Picnic in Amsterdam. doing something very similar. They're a grocery delivery service, specifically in Amsterdam and up in that part of the world. They've got a system that's doing something very similar, and it's doing personalization for the users. So you go to your website, pick out what you want, but now it'll start being able to make recommendations to you. So that's been a really cool one. And then in financial services, Fidelity is one of our big financial services companies. And so they're able to do their recommendations and push recommendations to their clients, doing the analysis through our data marketplace. We have there's a company called FactSet, which does a lot of financial data. That's public financial data on the markets and things like that and trends. And so they're actually using data sharing to get that data and put it and use it to run against algorithms against the data of their customers to figure out, what kind of recommendations should we be making for customer A versus customer B. So there's just, and it's funny, it's in every industry. And that's something that's amazed me. We're getting a lot more now into the travel industry. OAG, which is a clearinghouse for a lot of flight data and things like that, just launched stuff on our marketplace. I think it was this week. There's a lot of interest in that. Of course, all the airlines that are working with us because they're trying to figure out is how do they stay in business, right? How do they maximize their ROI? What routes should they keep running? Which routes should they cancel? How much should they charge for the flights? How do we try to keep the planes as full as possible? Again, and still allow some social distancing, because that's a new factor, right? So they're looking at the COVID data, that data set that we got from that Star Schema put together, where they're pulling it from Johns Hopkins and the CDC in the US and all the different health agencies around the world, and making that available instantly in a data mart so people can augment their analytics with it. Hey, Peter.
And interesting on the roadmap.
Nothing I can disclose.
Yeah, that was probably a trick question. All right.
Yeah, thanks, Peter.
Ken, thanks so much for sharing all of those informations with us. Thanks for being part of Techsylvania, and thanks to everyone for tuning.
And we do have a booth. So once the expo session opens back up, please drop over to the Snowflake booth if you have any other specific questions. And like I said, you can reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Make sure you mention Techsylvania. If you send me a connection request from LinkedIn, mention you saw my talk or in my Q&A at Techsylvania so that I have some idea of who you are.
All right. Thanks so much, Ken.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.